Okay, let me pull up my note here. Hello and welcome to this week's video. If you're new here, hi, my name is Camille. I'm a foreigner, expat, immigrant, whatever you want to call me, living in South Korea, and I like to talk about it on the internet. And today I'm going to do an updated version of my most popular video about living in Korea, and that is my how to find a non-teaching job. So I made that video almost a year ago when I found my first non-teaching, more than a year ago, actually, much more than a year ago, when I found my first non-teaching job in South Korea, which was working at a PR agency. And now it's 2023 and I have another non-teaching job in Korea, so I thought I would share an updated version of this video for a couple of reasons. One, lots of things around visas and eligibility for foreigners to work in Korea has changed since I made that video, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And then also I have new perspective. I actually am responsible for hiring as well, which gives me a different perspective on the type of things that Korean employers look for in applicants. So I'm going to start by just explaining the different types of visas that you can have in Korea that are relevant to work specifically, or allow you to work. So there are E-class visas, which are employer-sponsored visas. There are F-class visas, which are more like residency-based visas, and then there are a few outliers. So we'll start with the most obvious one, or the easiest ones to get, which are the E-class visas or the work sponsorship visas, and you've probably recognized, you will probably recognize a few of them. So there's the E2, the E6 and the E7, which are the most common. So an E2 visa is a teaching visa. I'm not going to talk a lot about that because there are tons of videos about how to teach English in Korea, but that's what the E2 is. The other two visas that you might have heard about are an E6 visa, which is a entertainment work-sponsored visa. The E6 visa is for foreign nationals who come to Korea to engage in activities related to the arts, entertainment, or sports. And eligible countries include Australia, Canada, New Zealand, the United States, and several European countries. I'm just gonna interject here to say the best place to check your eligibility for any visas that I'm gonna talk about in this video are on your Korean embassy or consulate's website, or by going in to speak to someone at the Korean embassy or Korean consulate where you live. This is just a high-level overview of some of your options so that when you know you want to come here and you know what visa you might like, you can go in and have a conversation because you'll know what you're asking about. The other visa that I spoke about was an E7. This is the visa that I'm on. There's a few different ways to get this visa, so you'll sometimes see like E7-4. Whether or not you're applicable for different types of the E7 would be, again, based on a conversation with the consulate, but in general, an E7 is like a sponsored work for specialized business. The E7 visa is for foreign nationals who are employed in a specific occupation that requires specialized skills or knowledge, such as research, technology, or business management. Eligible countries include Australia, Canada, New Zealand, the United States, and several other European countries. So this is the visa that I am on, and I am eligible for this visa based on a combination of my work experience, my employment history, those are the same thing, but my work experience and my education made me eligible for this visa. So those are two types of work sponsorships visa. If you're looking to work in an office, you're more likely to be on an E7. If you want to come here to work as an entertainer, then you would be on an E6. So even if you were working for an entertainment company, let's say you got hired by Hybe and you got hired as an idol or a trainee, you would be on an E6. But if you got hired as a marketing specialist or a business development manager, then you would be on an E7. So that's kind of the distinction there. The other class of visas that make you eligible to work in Korea that are kind of grouped are residency visas. So these are going to be your F-class visa. There are two types of visas that are most common. So the first one is the F5 visa. So that's for foreigners who have been residing in Korea for at least 5 years on a continuous basis and wish to remain in the country permanently. So F5 is a very common visa that some foreigners, long-term residents use to work legally here. And then another one would be an F6, also known as like the marriage visa. So if you marry a Korean national or a foreign national who has an F5, then you yourself can get an F6. That makes you eligible to work in Korea as well. The last two are very interesting. I have never been on these two. I've also never been on an F visa. So I'm not super familiar with them, but I do think they are great opportunities, especially if you are coming here temporarily, you want to work a little bit, you want to travel a little bit, and then you maybe want to transfer onto a work sponsorship E-class visa. Then these other two ones are good options for you. So the first one is a D10 visa, and this is also referred to as like the finding work visa or the unemployment visa. So there's two ways to get this. Again, it's a point-based system. So one, if you come here for school and you graduate and then you're looking for a job, then you can get a D10 visa. You can also get a D10 visa if you are living outside of Korea, you're considered a high income applicant and you have a good educational background, like for example you went to one of the top 500 universities in the world, then you can also apply for this D10 visa. And what the D10 visa basically lets you do is reside in Korea as a person who is unemployed and search for work. But I will say not everyone is eligible for it. Like I myself, I'm eligible to be on a sponsored visa, an E-class, but I'm not eligible for the D10 because of where I went to school and the fact that I'm not a high income earner. And the other visa that is interesting that is relatively new is the working holiday visa, or the H1 visa. And I wish that I knew this existed before I applied. I don't think it did actually exist when I originally moved to Korea. I think it is actually that new. So basically the H1 visa is a working holiday visa that's designated for, people who want to discover South Korea while financing their travel and living expenses by working small part-time jobs. The countries that have this visa agreement are Australia, Canada, New Zealand, Japan, France, and the US. But certain countries on that list have caps. Like for example, only 4,000 Canadians can get this visa every year, and it's different for different countries. So something else to keep in mind coming here on a working holiday, although you should have a good amount of money saved up because you will only be able to work part-time. You cannot work full-time. In other exciting news, there are two other visas that the Korean government is interested in introducing in 2023. Basically, the government wants to issue two different types of visas. So one is a K-culture training visa and one is a workcation visa. So the K-culture training visa is targeted towards young foreigners like ourselves who are interested in Korean content and are willing to learn about the country's entertainment system and content creation system. So if you wanted to come and be like a trainee, for example, instead of being on an E6, they're going to put you on this new visa, and they're expecting to launch it in the first half of the year, which is slowly running out. So stay tuned for news about this K-culture visa. And then the other visa is a workcation visa. So this is basically the remote work visa. They also haven't let us know when this one will be released, but essentially the gist is you can maintain your job in another part of the world and work remotely in Korea for an extended period of time. Okay, so that is everything that you need to think about making sure that you're eligible to work in Korea. So now let's flip the script and let's take a moment to talk about what makes a company eligible to sponsor foreigners. So unfortunately, not every Korean company can sponsor foreign visas. So if you do end up on an E-class visa, so an E7, for example, there are certain criteria that your employer needs to meet in order to be able to in order to sponsor your visa. Why do I use such complicated language sometimes? Because the E7 is designed for like specialized workers, there are only certain industries that can really sponsor it, or certain job roles that can have a sponsored E7 in them, because it's designed for skilled labor. There is also an H2, I believe, that is for low-skill labor or manual labor. So if you're interested in working in like agriculture, for example, then I think an H2 is a possibility for you. But the E7 is more for like business. If you are looking for a job, it's best to look for Korean companies that are exploring global growth or have target regions of growth that are international. Let's say they want to be big in Europe, or they want to be big in North America. Finding those companies is a really great way to make sure that they can sponsor you, or that they like your visa will be accepted, because it takes a certain type of person in order to market, for example, to European countries, or to grow and develop business in European markets. So that's always one good type of company to look out for. And then the other one, of course, would be the reverse. So if there is a global company that's opening a Korean arm, trying to find those companies to work for as well helps, because you can help bridge the gap between the global company and its culture and what's happening in Korea. So either look for Korean companies that are looking to expand outwards, or international companies that are looking to come into Korea. These are great ways to find jobs as a foreigner. So the company has to be in operation for at least 1 year. It has to have a minimum of 5 Korean employees. The ratio of foreign to Korean workers must not exceed a certain percentage. If most of your profit is made in international markets, then that ratio goes up. So again, if you are looking for a Korean company that operates globally and they generate a lot of income globally, then their ratio will be higher. They can hire more foreigners than a company that only runs business domestically in Korea. So something to keep in mind. The job position that they want to sponsor the visa for has to require specialized knowledge. So if it's just like a regular, administrative job, then you're probably not going to be able to get a sponsored work visa for it. It's going to have to be like very specific skilled labor. They have to be able to prove that they can support your salary, obviously, and they also have to provide a detailed job description, job contract, etc. to make sure that they're meeting all the requirements for your visa. So when you are applying for your E7, your company is also applying for your E7, and you both have to meet a certain set of requirements in order for it to go through. Okay, so that's what the company needs to do. That's what you need to do. And now let's find out where this match is made. Let's talk about Korean job hunting. You can check out that job board as well. Or if you are not a fan of job boards, you can of course go to job sites. So in the same way that we have like Monster in North America, is Monster even, I wouldn't even know how to apply to a job in North America now if I tried, but I don't know. You go to an actual job site where companies pay to list their jobs. So in Korea, some of the most popular ones are Saramin, PeopleNjob, and Job Korea. These job boards are 100% in Korean. So please keep that in mind when you go looking for them. There are a few tips and tricks which I'll get into at the end of this section, but just the last place that you can take a look is also LinkedIn. So Koreans use LinkedIn as well. There are fewer jobs on LinkedIn for sure, but they are still there, and especially if you're thinking of working for a global company that it has a headquarters in Korea or is opening a branch in Korea, those jobs you'll find on LinkedIn. So for example, actually both my jobs were listed on LinkedIn, but my first job would be the type of company that lists on LinkedIn because it's a global company that has a Korean arm, whereas my current job is more likely to post on a site like Job Korea, Saramin, or PeopleNjob, because they're not necessarily looking for foreigners. They just ended up with one. So some things to keep in mind when you are using these job sites is, especially if you are not a strong Korean speaker, do not apply for job postings that are written in Korean. Be very real and honest with yourself about your Korean skills and put that on your resume and out into the universe. Basically, if you have to translate a job posting, you're not going to be able to do the job. That's just, it might be very strong for me to say that, but it's true. If they're posting in Korean and you're translating the job post and you're trying to apply in Korean, A, they're going to know right away you don't speak Korean, and B, this just sets the tone for what it's going to be like in the work environment. You'll probably not receive any English support, and if you don't speak any Korean, that would be obviously very difficult. So my suggestion is when you look at job boards, job sites, or on LinkedIn, you search with keywords in the language you want to work in. So in my case, I would search for keywords in English. I'm not sure how many search results will come up if you search in another language like Spanish, French, etc. But a good amount of job postings do come up when you search in English. And most of those jobs are jobs that are interested in hiring foreigners. Otherwise, they would have written it in Korean. So when you're using job sites, just search with English keywords, because then you'll end up with English postings. Also, when you're going through these job postings, make sure that you're checking the language requirements, okay? You really want to look for something that says that Korean is preferred. So you'll see lots of posts that says Korean is a requirement. Obviously, if you have like, an intermediate to upper level of Korean, I would still apply for those jobs. If you're a beginner, I wouldn't waste your time applying for those jobs, because also professional Korean office Korean is very different than social friendly Korean. So unless you're really comfortable in Korean, I wouldn't apply to any job that has Korean as a requirement. I would look for jobs that has Korean as a preference. Furthermore, if a language level in Korean is not listed, then that means that they expect fluency. Think about it. If you're posting a job in your native country you're going to be working in your native language, are you writing that someone has to be fluent in the local language? No, probably not. So even if a job posting is written in English, if there's no preference or requirement listed for Korean, it means that they're looking for someone who's fluent. So if you're not fluent, I wouldn't waste your time applying for that. The best one is jobs where Korean is listed as a preference. The other thing that I would say is if you're applying for your first non-teaching job in Korea or your first job in Korea, I would urge you to try and apply outside of Seoul as well. It's extremely competitive to get a job in a major city right now, and there are so many people that are hiring either in the suburbs or in smaller cities. So like in my case, I work in Incheon and we struggle to fill our roles. So it will be easier for you to get a job if you look outside of Seoul. And then once you have one job and you're there for a year and you get comfortable working here, then I would suggest looking at bigger cities because it's just more competitive. You need more experience, you need to have been here. I would take a look outside major cities and just give those jobs a try. Don't neglect them. Yes, those are all my tips about job postings actually. I thought there were more, but that was it. So yeah. I always feel like I have so much to talk about on this subject and I'm sure I miss things. So if there are any tips and tricks that you have or any questions about these specific things, visa eligibility, company eligibility, or where to find job postings, let me know in the comments. Also, as I mentioned before, this is just part one. It's going to be a two-part series, so be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you know when part 2 comes out. And in part 2, I'm going to talk about resume writing tips, so cover letters, resume formatting. Do you put a picture on it? Do you not put a picture on it? As well as what to expect in your interview. So how many rounds are there? What do I mean you have to do a writing test? What should you wear? Etc, etc. I'm going to cover all those things in part 2, so really looking forward to filming that video, but I'm not going to film it now because my battery is dying again. I'm such a mess when I film. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time. Okay, bye!